How's it going, guys? My name's Shane. Welcome back to the Horror Basement and another installment in the classic horror review series. Today we're going to be talking about Bluebeard from 1944. This movie was directed by famous B-movie director Edgar G. Ulmer and stars John Carradine, the guy who would go on to play Dracula in most of the Universal films after the original 1930s Dracula. Um, so John Carradine plays the titular Bluebeard, Gaston Morell, a Bluebeard, of course, being a male serial killer who seduces and then murders his female victims. But Gaston is an artist, a painter, and also a puppeteer living in Paris while simultaneously strangling the women of his life. When he happens upon to meet our main character of the movie, Lucille, and of course Gaston invites Lucille and her friends to his puppet show that he's doing in the park, where he and his cohorts are putting on an opera of Faust, with entirely using puppets, and this puppet rendition of the opera Faust goes on for a good 5 minutes towards the beginning of the movie, which it has very impressive singing and puppetry, but at the same time, why do we need to see a 5-minute puppet rendition of Faust? And also I'm kind of salty because this movie, they kind of pan across to the crowd, and more people are attending this puppet show than currently watch my YouTube videos. But after the show, Gaston gets into a fight with his girlfriend slash co-star, and being a murderer, he takes his cravat, which is a mix between a tie and an ascot. It's kind of like a scarf that you tie into a little dainty tie around your neck. He takes that and kills his girlfriend, roommate, co-star, and dumps her into the canal of Paris, which frees him up, of course, to pursue a relationship with Lucille. And instead of having a Fritz or an Igor, like having a hunchback as his lackey or henchman, Gaston just has like a tiny, drunk old man dressed in a soldier's uniform that he sends on errands for him. So he sends Private Drunky McOldman over to Lucille's house to invite her to go over to Gaston's apartment, because she is a seamstress and he wants her to make outfits for his little puppets. This, of course, is all a ruse, and they quickly form a kind of courtship or relationship, and Lucille fixes or sews up the cravat for Gaston that he used to kill his former friend. And while all this is going on, Lucille's sister, Francine, or Franny, is dating the cop of the movie, Inspector Jacques, who, of course, being a cop, is looking for this Bluebeard character. And the long and short of the rest of it is that Francine ends up getting killed by Gaston in a very muddled and convoluted scheme to try and catch the Bluebeard. And then, of course, Jacques shows Lucille the cravat that this menace to society used to strangle her sister to death. And, of course, seeing her own stitch work in it, Lucille discovers that Gaston is the Bluebeard, and she sets him up, and the cops chase him through the rooftops of Paris until he jumps into the canal to presumably drown. So overall, there's, good things and bad things about this movie. I really liked the set design and how everything was set up. To Edgar Ulmer's credit, all of the sets and all the scenes of this movie look really beautiful, but the movie itself is kind of slow. Now, it may be that we've seen so many movies now about, like, okay, there's this crazy guy, and he's a serial killer, and he kills women, and he starts dating the main girl of the movie, and they've got to figure it out. So that's kind of a very well-tread path nowadays in horror movie history that perhaps was a little fresher back in 1944. But overall, the plot itself is not that interesting, and the way it's paced makes it feel a lot longer than the hour and 15-minute runtime that the movie really is. So while I enjoyed certain aspects of the film, I think this is one you can probably skip if you're not a huge fan of Edgar Ulmer's work or the vastly inferior Dracula to Bela Lugosi. Which, man, the last two movies I've covered, we have both Universal Draculas strangling people. So that's interesting. It's funny how that works out. And speaking of, it's time to pull the next two classics. Oh, and by the way, we're over halfway there. So the next classic is going to be Maniac from 1934. And then after that, I will be talking about The Corpse Vanishes from 1942. Alright guys, so that's going to be it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like. Leave a comment below on what your thoughts on this movie are, and if you have any other recommendations for me to review, join the Basement Army by hitting that subscribe button, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Thank you.